guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, I'm Kate. I'm fairly new to YouTube, so bear with me, I'm still figuring all this out. But today I thought I'd do another book review for you. The guest list. I don't know if you can see my copy, it's a bit well loved. I might have accidentally dropped it in the bath because I was reading it in the bath and it was so good I literally couldn't put it down to even like wash. Maybe that's a bit too much information, but yeah. So I thought today we would look at the guest list. So the guest list, like The Hunting Party, is a murder mystery. It's a whodunit book, and again, like The Hunting Party, I found it really gripping. I found this story, it's very different, but does have similar sort of themes running through it as The Hunting Party does. But I found this one that I didn't quite know who was the victim and who the murderer was. There's more characters in this one, there's more at play here. So it was harder for me to work out who was the victim, who was the murderer, how it was going to all end. It definitely kept me guessing right until the end. And actually the way it ended, I still didn't think it would end that way. The way it did, not that it's a bad ending at all, it's just I didn't think it was going to end that way. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I missed something, maybe you'll all read it and, you know, you'll be like, what's she on about, she missed something. But yeah, so I've done a little script for this today as well because I'm going to try really, really hard not to give away any spoilers. But I think this one might be a little bit more difficult to try and go into the details of and do a decent review of, or just have a decent little chat about without going into any spoilers in it. So I will do my best, and I'm really sorry if there's any spoilers in here. I'll try and do some timestamps to anything that I think might be a spoiler, but we'll see how we get on. So the guest list, the premise of it is that there's a wedding. So basically they're at a wedding on a remote island off the coast of Ireland, funnily enough. And this island, it's difficult to get to. And when you're going over in the boat, you can only go over at certain times, and it's boggy and dank and dark, and this wedding is happening in the winter. It's not the best weather, it's Ireland. And I'm part of the UK? No. It's the British Isles. The British Isles, there we are. We're not named for having the best weather here, and it's very boggy. There's loads of like peat around. So it's a fairly interesting place to have a wedding anyway. There's only this one real permanent structure on there, which is a Foley, which the owner of the Foley and her husband, so the wedding planner, Aoife? I'm really sorry anyone Irish out there if you can correct my pronunciation. I think it might actually be Alfie. Alfie and her husband Freddie, who are the owners of it. Alfie is the wedding planner and Freddie he does the cooking, he's the cook. So like with any wedding, you get together, you get all your old friends together. The couple who are getting married, they haven't been married that long. Haven't been together that long, so it's a bit of like their friends don't really know each other that well, their families don't really know each other that well. It's a fairly new relationship. So it's their friends coming together on this one island, and as on the back of the hunting party, there's a little, get a bit closer so you can see that. It's a little bit of a giveaway there, so I'll read it off the back. So there's, each has a secret, each has a motive. Off the windswept Irish coast, guests gather for the wedding of the year. It's a little bit of a giveaway there, so I'll read it off the back. So there's, each has a secret, each has a motive. Off the windswept Irish coast, guests gather for the wedding of the year. Old friends, past grudges, happy families, hidden jealousies. 13 guests, one body. One guest won't be leaving this wedding alive, which is no help at all in figuring out what happens. And I should probably say that, I don't know, this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but the wedding is between, basically, she's a journalist, socialite, she's got like a magazine website, and a Bear Grylls type of person who gets dropped off in the wilderness and then has to, find his way out. But from the sounds of it, he gets a lot more help than we think. Let's not go into that, that's a tangent. So the groom is quite posh, and he went to this really fancy boarding school, boys only boarding school, when he was younger, that his father was actually headmaster of, and all his friends have come from that, or a lot of his friends are school friends that have come from that environment with him. And when they get together and when they drink, they get very loud and leery, and they start doing this chant that can be like this rugby chant they used to do that sounds quite intimidating. And I won't tell you what it is because that's a spoiler, because that's in the book as well. But the more the book goes on, you realise that there's characters in it that have point of view chapters, and you realise that obviously they're all interlinked and intertwined because they're at this wedding, but there's events that intertwine, like it does tell you how the bride and groom met, and that event will come back. So when you're reading it and you read how they meet, keep that in your mind, because that's a vital piece of information to come back to later. I mean, obviously them meeting is the reason everyone's there anyway, so I don't think that is too much of a spoiler. I'm sorry if it is, because the bride's best friend is a guy who goes on the stag do, and there's something that happens there where, because it's all the groom's friends, who 90% of them went to this school, and stuff went on at that school. Like, in all honesty, it doesn't sound like a very nice place. It kind of sounds a bit like, if you've watched The Crown, the school that Prince Philip and Prince Charles go to, it sounds like that, but almost worse in a way. Basically, it sounds like they almost haze some of the younger boys, and I like to think that this doesn't happen in schools, but I could be wrong. Boarding schools, I don't know. I didn't go to boarding school. Really, like, you kind of have to be in crowd, have a bit of steel about you, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And they revert back to who they were when they were at school, and the old behaviours of school, and they had all this fun at school, and wasn't school brilliant because we had to do this, that and the other. Or behaviour at school, and the way that they behave when they get together. And it's also about arrogance. So the groom, he's arrogant. I'm just going to put it out there. He is arrogant. He's a TV star. He's fairly good looking. He's written to be good looking, and he's written to have women adore him and fall for him, and like the attention he gives them. And it comes out trickling that he's the type of guy that has never treated women in his life that well. And I think, that's not that surprising considering he's that type of a guy. Circle. Turns out there's been lots of betrayals happen. And on the bride's side, there's not so many people on her side. She doesn't really have many friends. She has this guy who's her best friend, and then she has her half-sister, her mum and her dad's new partner, or wife. I think he's got a wife. And she's always desperately trying to impress her father. That's why she's having the wedding in Ireland, because her father is Irish, so she wants to kind of impress him by playing up to her Irish roots and that. And she clearly has what is a bit of a strained relationship with her mum and with her sister. So her mum obviously has some issues of resentment around what she had to give up when she originally had the bride. Whereas by the time she had the younger sister, her life was in a different place. She was older. So there's less. They've got a better relationship. They're closer. The mother and the half-sister are closer. But the half-sister's story is probably the most interesting one. So she's called Olivia, and she's the one. She has her own point of view chapters, so really pay attention to what she's saying in her point of view chapters, and this will help you figure things out. She's in a really bad way. She's young, she's just dropped out of uni, and from what we can tell, she's had a bad breakup. Or on the surface, it looks like it's just been a really bad breakup, or she's getting over a broken heart. You know, as happens when you're that age and you're at uni. So her story is really interesting, but she is in a really bad place mentally. Like, seriously, an awful, awful place mentally. Like, her mental health is not in a great place. And her relationship with Jules, who is bride, also is not helping her mental state as well, because there's a little bit of resentment from Jules towards Olivia and the relationship that Olivia has with their mother and the way that Olivia has been treated. And even the relationship between Jules and Olivia isn't that great. And yeah, so there's almost a lot of resentment on the bride's side, and then on the groom's side, the more you dig deep into it, there's a lot of betrayals. And the more the story progresses and the more it goes on, you realise that everyone's stories are interconnected. So Aoife, I'm going to go with Aoife. And I'm so sorry to anyone who's Irish that watches this and you hear my terrible pronunciation. I'm so sorry. So Aoife, she talks about having her own tragedy, their own family tragedy, and there's a little graveyard on the island. So for that time, while all the wedding guests are on the island, it's the first time in a long time that there's going to be more people on the island alive than dead. There's going to be more alive people on the island than dead people on the island. There's a little gravestone, a little cemetery there, and from the sounds of it, it's her relatives that are buried there, or she knows the people that are buried there, and she's had a tragedy. Her family has had a tragedy, or a tragedy. I will get that word out. A tragedy, and yeah. So, and it's something to do with water, because you catch her looking out over water. I'm really struggling here to try and do it without spoilers. Ooh, this one's harder to do without spoilers, and I'm sorry, I might have to spoil it. But also, the best man, he is basically a poor man's version of Will. He's the groom, essentially. He's never really grown up, or he has, but he's had failed business ventures. You know, he forgets his suit over on the mainland, so he has to borrow Will's, which doesn't quite fit right. And Jules constantly asks him, like, why are you still friends? Your lives have gone, like, completely different ways. And he says, history, we've known each other so long. It's like that ride or die thing, you know, when you've got a friend that you've just known forever and you're just going to be friends with them forever. Even though your lives are going in separate directions, you're going in different paths. In life, in your adult life, you've gone down different roads. You're still going to always be friends because you've got that lifelong bond with everything that's happened before in your shared history. So that's something to pay attention to as well, and that comes out as another slight betrayal. So between Will and his friends, there's a lot of betrayals in there. And that's not necessarily a spoiler because it does come out in the course of the book, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the murder, it's just motive. Why the person who gets murdered, basically. It doesn't have anything to do with the murderer's motives. But it's interesting that the more the story goes on, the more these characters are interlinked. Not because they know the bride and the groom, but because of events that have happened in their lives that are interlinking them with the groom, essentially. They've all had someone in their lives that he has, I don't want to say this because this is probably a really big spoiler. Basically, they're all interwoven and they've all had some sort of dealings with Will, whether they've known it's been him or not. Inadvertent dealings with him, either themselves or by a third party, before they get to this wedding, before they know anything about this wedding. So I'm probably going to end speaking about it there because I can't go too much further without giving away some major spoilers. But I would say just pay a real close attention to the point of view characters in it, because unlike the hunting party, this isn't just point of view character chapters. So you've got the point of view characters, and then you've got now what's happening after the waitress goes out and she comes back and screams and she's like, "There's a body!" Obviously not that happy that there's a body. But I found this one really gripping as well, just like the hunting party. And I found this one harder to work out, as I said. There's more twists and turns in it. I think you can definitely tell it's her second book because I got to the end and I wasn't so sure who was going to be the person who murdered them. And then the person that actually is murdered, I didn't know who that was. You get to a certain point in the book and there's about 3 or 4 people who could be the murderer because they would have absolutely every right and they just want to get real vengeance on the person who gets murdered. I will say that the person that gets murdered absolutely deserves it. I think in the hunting party they didn't necessarily deserve it. They weren't an awful person, they were just maybe a bit arrogant and out of themselves. And this person, the victim in the guest list, really does deserve it. And this one really did keep me guessing. I do know that my mum read it, so I gave this book to my mum after I read it, and I've got it back now. She read it and she kept going, "Oh, is it this person? Is it that person?" So I think she got it probably quicker than I did. But this one kept me guessing more, and there's more twists and turns in it, and there's definitely a lot more subtleties, and there's a lot more people who could be the murderer or the victim. There's more people in play, let's say. On a chessboard, you've got more pieces in play. Less pieces are knocked out early. So all in all, I think the guest list... So all in all, I do think that the guest list is another really good book. I'm really excited to read whatever Lucy Foley brings out next. I think the 2 books of hers that are out, that I know of anyway, and that I've read are really good. They're really gripping. They've really kept me guessing. So, but definitely, please do give the guest list a read. I really do recommend it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope there's not too many spoilers in it. I did my absolute best for you to try not to get any spoilers in. I don't think I've quite managed it as well as I did in the hunting party, and I'm really sorry for that, but I hope that you go away from this and you want to read the book and you don't know who the victim or who the murderer is. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you read it.